Put in your name. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. I am Marietta Fong. I'm a member of the board of the South Coast Interfaith Council. And this program, Courageous Conversations Over Coffee, started early in 2020 in response to the pandemic and our community's need for conversation, connection, and inspiration. And today's conversation, I'm really looking forward to. We have Jackie Menter and Naomi Steinfeld as our presenters, and I'll introduce them a little bit more as we get into the program. But we're focusing on a poignant, critical, and really urgent situation for refugees from Afghanistan. Jackie and Naomi will be giving us a bit of the history, an explanation of the process and the current situation, and an appeal for our engagement and our involvement. We'll have a presentation first from Jackie with an overview of the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program and the Orange County and LA perspective. And Naomi will be able to give us some information about the Welcome Circle of the National Council of Jewish Women and some additional ways to contribute and to support the effort. Meanwhile, during the presentation, do be looking at your chat box because we will have some important links to additional information and resources for you. Later on, we will open up to some questions that I hope you'll share with us in the chat, because I will be looking at the questions that you put in the chat, and then we'll share those with our guests. And we'll close with a closing from Melia Islamajid, our executive director. But first, I'd like to introduce briefly. Now, Jackie is going to put most of her bio in the chat. So because it's quite extensive, Jackie's been involved in the Orange County and Los Angeles. She's the director, as it says in the chat. She's consulting for HIAS, and she is the director and co-founder of the Orange County Jewish Coalition for Refugees. And then Naomi is with the National Council of Jewish Women and has been working diligently on welcome circles and other things to support the Afghan refugees that are here. Enough for me. I'm going to turn it right over to Jackie and let her share this critical information with us. Jackie.
Thank you, Marietta, and thank you everybody for joining today for this conversation and for having me, for giving me the opportunity to share with you about one of my favorite topics, refugees and resettlement. I'm going to share my screen. I won't be able to see you when I share my screen, so if you have any questions while I'm speaking, just speak up, please. So I wear two hats. I'm the director of the OC Jewish Coalition for Refugees, and I'm also a consultant with HIAS, a liaison to the welcome circles that are here in Southern California, Los Angeles and Orange County. And I will be talking about what welcome circles are as we go through the presentation. Just wanted to give a little bit of context and background to the refugee situation and the global refugee crisis. As you can see, this is information from United Nations High Commission on Refugees. That is the arm of the United Nations that deals with refugees. And as you can see, there are 84 million forcibly displaced people worldwide, which is a rather staggering number. You're going to see a couple different statistics that don't jive precisely, and I'm not sure why, but these are all numbers that are taken from recent UNHCR documents. There are between 26 and 29 million people in the world right now who are designated as refugees. And to get that designation, that has to be determined by UNHCR. So to be a refugee, you have to be out of your country, that is your homeland, that you had to flee from. You have to find the contact for UNHCR and go through interviews and a process with them to be designated as a refugee. And once you receive that refugee designation, you are then in theory eligible to be resettled in a third country. You'll see as we move forward that becoming resettled as a refugee is quite complicated. One second. Okay. So this is a lot to read. I will share the slides if you'll be sending out a follow-up email for people who want to read all of this. So again, here it says there's 25.9 million refugees worldwide. This is as March 2020. I believe the previous slide was a 2021 statistics. The number of refugees continues to increase. And whatever number we talk about today, we have to be mindful that those numbers don't yet include the now over 2 million Ukrainian refugees over the past 2 weeks that have fled Ukraine. Some of these numbers are really quite staggering. 1 in every 500 refugees worldwide, 1 in every 500 refugees in 2019 were resettled. That's less than 0.25%. So even if you are lucky enough to get that UNHCR seal of approval that you are actually designated as a refugee, the likelihood of resettlement to a third country is actually quite low, and that's really quite sad. I'm going to move on from here. 1 second. Okay.
Where do they go? Like, they just stay in camps mostly?
Yeah. So where they go, is this the one? Yes. Okay. So Turkey has 3.7 million refugees. Turkey, Pakistan, and Uganda have the highest number of refugees in the world. Refugees are pretty much everywhere. The top countries that refugees have fled from are Syria, Myanmar, Democratic Republic of Congo. And the refugees from Syria essentially are trying to get to the EU, and they are in many countries throughout the EU. And of those 3.7 million refugees in Turkey, I don't know the precise number, but a majority, or at least a plurality of them, are Syrian. The conditions for them are not good. Some of them are in refugee camps, and some of them live just trying to make their way and earn money any way they can. So not all refugees are in refugee camps, but millions are. Okay, let's talk just a little bit about refugees coming to the United States and refugee admissions. So during the Trump administration, the United States Refugee Admissions Program, USRAP, was essentially eviscerated, and the program was essentially shut down. We saw very few. Each year it decreased and decreased. The primary reason is that the number of refugees for the United States that are allowed to be brought to the country that number is designated each year by the president. It's called the presidential determination. And the president is supposed to consult with Congress and with the national resettlement agencies didn't always happen between 2016 and 2020. And the presidential determination, or that refugee cap for the United States, decreased gradually each year to our lowest point in 2020. And the numbers you're seeing here are what the refugee cap number was determined at, but that doesn't mean we actually met that number. So the number of refugees who actually came in, especially during that 4-year period, was actually lower than the cap was set at. Okay, if there are no questions about that, I will continue. That looks like a repeat slide. Okay, just a little bit about the process. In order, as I mentioned, in order to be designated as a refugee, to be considered for resettlement into a third country, you go through UNHCR, and then UNHCR determines, you can request what country you want to be resettled in. That request may not always be honored. And you go through a very extensive screening process that you see here. DHS, Department of Homeland Security, is involved. There's a biometric security check. This isn't mentioned, but there's something like, here we go. There's something like 8 American national security agencies involved with this. So these people are literally the most vetted, background checked people in the world. The US refugee program is extremely extensive in the vetting it does for refugees being admitted here. This whole process can take, if you're lucky, 1 year, 2 to 3 years is more the average. And then, as I mentioned before, the majority of refugees don't even get this option to resettle. So the situation for refugee resettlement in the United States now is a little bit dismal based on the cuts to funding. There are 9 national resettlement agencies, or RAs, in the United States. They serve as umbrella agencies for affiliates throughout the country. And every year, as the refugee cap was lowered and the number of refugees coming into the country was even lower than the cap, that resulted in the refugee resettlement agencies receiving less and less funding, because their funding is mostly through the government, or primarily through the government. They also have private funders. And if there are no refugees coming in, then their funding is severely cut. So we're in a situation right now where the resettlement agencies are trying to rebuild. We're pushing for legislation to rebuild the whole movement and the infrastructure. And now that refugees have begun to start coming into the country, they're working in a situation where their staff has been cut severely. And all of a sudden, in August of 2021, there's an influx of 76,000 Afghan evacuees coming from Kabul to the United States. And as I mentioned, the normal refugee resettlement process can take years. So there would be a gradual, trickling in of refugees throughout the year, ideally a constant flow. And the refugee resettlement agencies would know well in advance when they would be receiving a family that they'd have to resettle. So having 76,000 people come all at once at a time when when their staffing has been decreased to lower numbers than we've seen in many years, is obviously there's going to be a bottleneck. So those Afghans who are being resettled through resettlement agencies are not getting the attention of the caseworkers that they really need. And frankly, even before all of this, the attention caseworkers were able to give to refugee families was still not optimal. So this is really pretty dismal. So as I said, the caseloads are not manageable, and more smaller community organizations like the OC Jewish Coalition for Refugee, as an example, have sprung up over the past few years to help fill those gaps and help with the resettlement of refugees coming in, and partnering with those formally designated resettlement agencies. And lastly, since the Biden administration decided to evacuate those Afghans through Operation Allies Welcome, it became quite obvious that the resettlement agencies would not be able to handle this all on their own. So the government, in partnership with private funders, which set up new nonprofits, one called the Community Sponsorship Hub, developed this Sponsor Circles program, which is essentially a form of private community sponsorship. And this is a method of resettling refugees that is used in other countries, in particular Canada, very, very successfully. And we're trying to model the success that Canada has seen in the past few years, especially since the Syrian refugee crisis and the Rohingya refugee crisis. So it's modeled after that program. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what private sponsorship means and how that works, and opportunities to get involved with that. Just to share, I like numbers. I can't add or subtract or divide, but I do really like numbers and stats. And this shows the refugee arrivals by state for this fiscal year, which starts on October 1st. Started in October 1st of 21. And so far, the amount of refugees to California for this, October through, so the first quarter of the fiscal year is 353 refugees, not a lot. So those refugees came through the traditional resettlement program, totally different than the Afghan, what we call refugees. They technically are not refugees. We'll get into that. And what refugee resettlement looks like in Orange County and Los Angeles right now. The main focus is those Afghan evacuees from Operation Allies Welcome. It was approximately 76,000 people were evacuated. I believe 67,000 of them were Afghans. Some were Americans and some other people who were evacuated. Excuse me. And those Afghan evacuees were brought to 8 US military bases in the United States, where they were staying until February 19th. And that was the day that they were completely emptied out of that first wave of evacuees. And 3 families arrived to Orange County on February 19th. They were among the very last to be resettled and placed in a community. And so our highest welcome circles are now working with those families and resettling them. And California, let's see, as of February 22nd, so this is current, California has received 8,300 Afghan evacuees. California and Texas are the states who received the largest number of Afghan evacuees. And California and Texas also happen to be the two states that when the Refugee Resettlement Program is in full operation, they also receive the highest number of refugees in general. We're a popular location. So I searched and searched and searched, and it's very hard to get accurate statistics on certain aspects of these numbers. And I was unable to find specifically how many Afghan evacuees have come to Los Angeles and Orange County. What I did kind of extrapolate is that I have to check my notes, which I can't see here. There are, I think, over 1,000 refugees have come to Los Angeles or through Los Angeles, because from Los Angeles, they are then sent to Orange County. There are 3 refugee resettlement agencies in Los Angeles proper, the IRC, IILA, and one other, IRIS. So
Jackie, I'm sorry, this is Naomi, could I just add something?
yeah,
About 2.5 months ago, Highest said that the expectation was that about 750 individuals would come to Los Angeles County and about 350 to Orange County. It sounds like more have come to Orange County, but so that does sort of add up to around 1,000 that at least have, come initially to this area from the military bases.
yeah, extrapolating, that sounds like about the right number. 500 or so have come to Orange County. They are initially placed, if they come through a resettlement agency, they have been initially placed in hotels, because housing is the biggest challenge, and finding housing that is affordable is next to impossible. And so they've been staying in hotels for up to 90 days. And then the money runs out that the resettlement agencies has to keep them in hotels. So ideally they find housing by the time that 90 days is up. 100 or so of those families have been in Orange County hotels. A lot of them are getting placed in housing, and many of them end up moving out of Orange County. It's too expensive here. It's hard to find housing, and they're working primarily with Uplift Charity, which is a resettlement agency, newly designated resettlement agency in Orange County. And they've been finding housing and placing them out of state. Okay. So we've been using the term refugees and evacuees. The 76,000 evacuees, they are evacuees. They are, for the most part, technically not refugees, but it's just a word that is used because that's how we commonly understand what their status to be. What they actually are legally in immigration speak are humanitarian parolees. And humanitarian parole is something that can be enacted when there's a humanitarian crisis. And when there's an urgent, dire, life-threatening Congress, the government can say, we're going to parole in X amount of people from wherever that crisis happens to be. And that is the mechanism that was used to allow those Afghan people to come into the United States through the evacuation. So the status as a parolee, I'm sorry about the barking, my dog is being really bad. Their status as a parolee it's a non-status. It just means they were allowed to the United States legally. They have 1 year from their arrival into the United States. by which they must make arrangements to adjust their status so they can claim asylum, depending on their personal situations. They can apply for SIV status. That's a special immigrant visa, and that's a special carve out of the Refugee Resettlement Program for Iraqis and Afghans who worked for the United States government or military. And those SIVs, those applications, like a regular refugee application, can take years. So many of those Afghans who came here in August, they didn't have time to go through that whole process, although they may very well qualify as SIVs, which SIV, that gives them a green card and legal permanent residence, LPRs, and it's a better status than it's better, and it's a clear way to it's a clear pathway to citizenship. The rest of them will have to apply for asylum, and that's a much more difficult process. They did all, however, arrive. The one thing that was special about, well, it wasn't special at first. So when somebody's paroled into the United States, typically, they are not afforded any benefits or special status. So originally, when these Afghans came in, they were not entitled to any refugee benefits or social service benefits or anything that refugees receive. However, legislation was soon enacted so that this special group of parolees were deemed eligible to receive those benefits. So that was a huge bonus for this population. And that's making it much easier to resettle them now that they are here. So how to help Afghan refugees in Orange County, and a little bit of this will apply to Los Angeles County as well. The OC Jewish Coalition for Refugees, just as example, we are resettling 5 families in partnership with Home for Refugees, 5 Afghan families from the evacuation. And we are resettling 3 Afghan families, soon to be 4, because we expect Naomi's NCJW Welcome Circle to be matched with the family, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. And I put the logos of those organizations in Orange County that are working to support refugees and asylum seekers and evacuees. And of these, Afghan Refugee Relief, which is the newest, they launched right after the evacuation, and they're really phenomenal. They're an all-volunteer organization, and they're also active in Los Angeles County if you're looking to connect and volunteer with a group in LA. Okay, so how to help resettle these people? There are welcome circles, AKA sponsor circles, and as I mentioned, it's a form of private sponsorship. So I'm going to go back to that other slide later. So what that means is to form a sponsor circle or a welcome circle, you need 5 adults, 5 to 8, who form a team. They go through a background check. They fundraise. They need to fundraise $20,000 minimum to support that family for the first 6 to 12 months. And they need to submit an application. And then they get matched with the family. And depending on depending on the timing of all this, that match can happen pretty soon. So we're talking now about matches for this next phase happening within the next 2 weeks, because there's another phase of this program that has just started, and there are another 3,500 Afghan evacuees who were not originally brought to the States. They were brought to lily pad locations or safe havens that are US military bases abroad. So the first group of this 3,500 arrived a couple days ago. And this time they won't be dispersed throughout different military camps throughout the US. They're all going to one central location in Leesburg, Virginia. They'll be housed in what was described to me as a center, but it's not a military base. So I don't really know what that means, but it's not a military camp. So I think that's an improvement, because the Afghans who described what it was like living on the military camp, they called the camps refugee camps. So the living conditions there were not ideal, but at least they were safe. So for those who are interested in actually forming a welcome circle, it can be done in a matter of a week or two, depending on how fast you work, and submit that application. And like I said, within the next 2 weeks, we'll be matching new circles with Afghan families, which is very exciting. And okay, so what do those welcome circles do? What is the actual work they are doing? So when a refugee family or an evacuee family decides to go the route of private community sponsorship, they opt out of having the services of a refugee resettlement agency. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I personally believe that the level of attention that they get through the welcome circles is far greater than the level of attention that they would get from any resettlement agency, because they are just, they're so overrun with so many people that they're trying to serve right now. And essentially that volunteer circle forms a mini resettlement agency, and they provide the wraparound services that a regular resettlement agency would do. But you have 5 to 8 people all working with one family, rather than one caseworker who probably has 50 families they're working with. And they do it with the support and resources from 2 umbrella organizations. So if they come through HIAS and form a HIAS welcome circle, they get all the support that HIAS has to offer, and it is quite robust. And if a group doesn't want to do it through HIAS and they want to do it another way, you can do it through sponsor circles, and then Home for Refugees, which also happens to be in Orange County, will be the organization providing that support and resources. I know it's a little complicated and convoluted, but that's resettlement for you. And so you don't have to know in advance any of this information or how to resettle a refugee, because you will learn. You will learn how to do that through some online training, and you will learn from doing, and you will learn from having the support of a liaison like me, or a liaison from Home for Refugees, when you can't figure out what an I-551 form is that you need for your SIV client, for example. And basically you are helping these families by giving them a warm welcome and a group of people who can really embrace them and who will care about them. And provide transportation, get them signed up for all their benefits and insurance, and get their kids enrolled in school, and help them find jobs and help them find ESL if they need that, and help them learn how to navigate their new neighborhood and, an American grocery store, and, what's a credit card and what's a bank ATM card, things that some people from Afghanistan are not familiar with. So it is an awesome task, but it's very fulfilling, and it is life-changing for both the volunteers and the families who are being resettled. I want to go back 2 slides. I did it. Okay, so let's say you want to help, but you're not in a position to actually form a circle and, commit that amount of time, which for the first month or so is, quite a few hours a week. Other ways you can help are with any leads for housing. If you know landlords who own apartments or homes that rent for, not that much, and can help make connections with those landlords, that is immensely helpful. If you are an immigration attorney that is able to offer pro bono services, also super helpful. If you teach ESL or know how to tutor people for whom English is not their first language, also helpful. OCJCR, we help the families by setting them up with all the furniture they need and all the smaller household items that they need. So if you have gently used furniture that you might want to donate, or household items that are gently used, or if you want to purchase items from our Amazon registry, those are also additional ways you can help. And then welcome circles and sponsor circles, which we talked about. So I think, oh, right. Okay, so lastly, if you are interested in really learning the ins and outs of what a welcome circle is and does in more detail, I invite you to join me and another colleague from HIAS for this information session on Friday, March 18th. I don't know if I gave you the link for that to put in the chat, but I'll make sure that it gets in there. And I'm going to stop sharing. Do I have anything else here? That's my contact information. If anybody would like to be in touch with me after the program, or if you have questions now, I'm also happy to answer questions now.
And Jackie, that information session, is that a virtual session rather than an in-person session?
Yes, that will be on Zoom.
Okay, good to know. We have a lot of links in the chat. We have a lot of information in the chat. And the only question I believe we've had in the chat so far was to find out more about the wraparound services for welcome circles and others provide. And I know Naomi is going to address that. So do we have any more questions for Jackie before we have Naomi give us more information that she can share with us? If not, go ahead and put those in the chat while we're listening. And Naomi, I'm going to ask you to jump in and share with us what you can.
Okay. Some of what I had has been addressed, but I would like to go back to a couple of things. And in addition to talking about our NCJW Welcome Circle, I'd like to focus on some aspects of the system that are really important. And I would like to go back briefly to the question of humanitarian parole. So parole is a way for people to enter the US when they have no other legal ways to do so. And it's temporary. It's for 2 years. And as Jackie said, to change that status, they can apply for asylum within the first year. They can also seek to get status through family sponsorship or employer sponsorship, or some of them may be eligible for SIV status. Many people did come on SIV status, people that had a history of working with the military, but others are eligible, but were not able to apply, and they now may not have the documentation because many of these people were also told to destroy their papers, destroy their history, because it puts them in danger because it showed a connection with the United States or the military. So it just becomes very, very complicated. And so one of the things is there has been an attempt, a congressional attempt to pass a bill that's called the Afghan Adjustment Act. They tried to include it in 2 omnibus budget bills, including the one that just passed, the fiscal year 22 omnibus spending bill. It did not get in those bills. It can pass separately. And if that can pass, it would allow them to have the same status as refugees and would take away the pressure to go through the complicated legal immigration system and also take away the time pressure. So should that come up again, various advocacy groups and the resettlement agencies, all put out calls to please contact your representative, contact your senator to pass this bill. And I just would like to put in a plug for that. It's really important. It would really make a difference. And it would also take away a lot of the strain on immigration lawyers who are already overwhelmed with the needs of people in the system. And there are just not enough pro bono lawyers. And again, along with the funding for the resettlement agencies having decreased, the funding for those kinds of organizations has also decreased in the last few years. So are there any questions about that part? Okay.
Sorry, I had a question. I put it in the box.
I didn't. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my daughter, I was investigating how to get an acquaintance of my daughter's out. She and her husband both worked for nonprofits. She worked for Save the Children and felt very vulnerable. They didn't, they didn't qualify for what is it called?
SIV.
SIV, and I couldn't really find a way. But is the humanitarian parole a way for them?
Are they still in Afghanistan?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, well, the other thing about the Afghan Adjustment Act is it would make it easier for people that are not here yet to be brought. And many of the people that are here have family members still in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, people cannot apply for either humanitarian parole, I think I'm correct, or refugee status from within the country. They have to go out at least to a neighboring country and then apply. And Harold's nodding his head. Thank you, Harold. And so it's very, very difficult. And the whole system of immigration legislation and the way it works is incredibly complex. And it doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. And the way it's supposed to is already very difficult. So I'm sorry, that's not very helpful. They need to get out of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Afghans in Afghanistan can, in theory, file for humanitarian parole with a sponsor in the United States. However, right now they can't really safely get out of Afghanistan. And after the evacuation, and since the evacuation, there were hundreds of thousands of Afghans left there who were in the same situation as those who were evacuated and could not make it out. And it's extremely difficult. And then there was a whole flurry of humanitarian parole applications filed, which go through USCIS. And nearly all of them have been rejected.
Yes.
So, yeah, unfortunately, while in theory it's a viable action, in practice, it's not effective right now.
Yeah. Well, and then there are all the other issues of what's happening with Afghanistan and lack of money and lack of food and other opportunities for advocacy with our government, which I will leave it at that. So, okay, so our NCJW Welcome Circle. Welcome Circle and Sponsor Circles are basically the same. Welcome Circle is Highest's name for a sponsor circle. And Highest extended the time period for support from the 3 months required by the government and provided through the resettlement agencies with government funding to 6 month period, because 3 months is a very, very short time for people to adjust to the communities and, you know, find work and everything else that needs to be done. And our sponsor circle is, our core team is made up of 5 members of NCJW. We have a number of prospective volunteers who will join us, and at this point, about 5 or 6 of them are interested in doing things where they would have direct contact with family members. And we also have other people who are offering support in various ways, excuse me, such as in-kind donations or financial donations or connections with services that they work in or are aware of. And we've made a lot of contacts with different organizations, both public and private, in the community to provide different kinds of help. And wraparound services basically means providing help in all aspects of individual and families' lives. And I'm going to read you the list of areas that were included on the application welcome plan that we needed to address and look for ways to take care of these responsibilities and help in these areas and find the resources in the communities. So this is housing, basic necessities, which is, you know, everything from pots and pans to diapers to blankets to clothing. They may have come from a warm area and now they're going to a cold area, or now with the seasons changing, it's different. Documentation, services and benefits, health and mental health care, legal assistance, education, language, interpretation and translation, cultural connections, community orientation, employment, and transportation. And there are probably some other things that somehow got left out, but those are the basic broad categories, and that's more than a dozen areas of life. So I hope that clarifies what wraparound services mean. Excuse me. And in terms of the particular areas, something like community orientation, that might be, you know, walking around your neighborhood. Where are you living? What's here? How do you go shopping? What's a supermarket? What are these strange things in packages and cans that have different names than they did at home? Services and benefits. The people on humanitarian parole are entitled to benefits that other parolees are not. They're entitled to SNAP. They're entitled to, depending on the age of the children, they might be entitled to TANF, to welfare. They can work. They have work documentation. They can get work authorization for the state. So, but again, these continue for 2 years, and then they have to change how they're designated, or they can't stay in the country. They're at risk of having to leave the country. Ways to help our Welcome Circle, and again, they were covered, but basically anything from financial contributions to furniture, other in-kind contributions, volunteering if you're interested, and it could be volunteering for things like, do you have a truck? Can you bring furniture? Do you want to meet with the family to help them with their English? We're fortunate here if we can locate them in Long Beach. There are really good ESL programs available. And we have a lot of supports here and a lot of resources here, but they'll need help still to use those. We're going to need to help children register for school, or if they're, older people, to start help them with an employment search. And in Afghanistan, they don't do things like employment interviews. They're generally not formal resumes. So these are very unfamiliar to the people, all of these people that are coming here. HIAS, as our umbrella agency, has provided a tremendous number of resources, trainings, links with different kinds of information, and some of what I had presented about humanitarian parole actually came from a recent HIAS training. But I would like to say, Jackie, you said, that a Welcome Circle could be formed within 2 weeks. Our Welcome Circle team began seriously working on the plan right after Christmas, and worked very, very hard for 6 weeks to get things together. And at this point, with HIAS's resource library and all the things that have already been pulled together, and the work of other groups in other areas, I would hope it would be a lot easier for future groups coming together, because they could have access to some of that. But basically, our team did just an incredible amount of research on what's available in the area, what was required, what needed to be done, what are state benefits, what are federal benefits. And it was a lot of work and took a lot of time, and they did a great job. Another thing I just want to mention about the Welcome Circles, and putting the links in the chat. I put links in the chat for several things if you're interested in helping. The Welcome Circles are serving a much smaller number of people than the resettlement agencies, but it's much more intensive service. And again, it lasts, at least with HIAS, for 6 months rather than the 3 months, and it really makes a difference. So are there any questions particularly about that?
Joanne, I believe you had a question. You had your hand up for a while.
I wondered how you get involved in ESL. Do you just go enroll people in ESL, or you can help them?
We're going to try to enroll them if you're interested. What area are you in? Are you in Long Beach?
Yeah.
Yeah, I put the link for people interested in terms of our Welcome Circle, the National Council of Jewish Women link, which is Welcome Circle at NCJW. Probably Deb can help. Let me find it. Anyway, it's in the chat. So just email that number and we'll get back to you. Because what we would like, their Long Beach City College and sometimes adult school has ESL, but it would help to have that supplemented with individual tutoring and you know, being able to just have somebody come and talk with someone or help them, you know, write back and forth.
I see.
So
Okay.
if you're interested, or if you want, you can just send me a message in the chat with your email and we'll get back to you.
And we are planning to have all of these links and all of this information along with the recorded session that's posted on YouTube. When you look at our channel for South Coast Interfaith Council, if you'll look at the Courageous Conversation series and look for this specific session, in the description area, we're hoping to have all of these references and all of these links that are in the chat as much as possible. And if there's anything missing, we will definitely put in, and I see here Jackie's email that's in the chat right now, but Jackie's email and Naomi's email. And if you can't even find those, then email one of us at South Coast Interfaith Council and we'll do our best to get you connected with what you need as far as resources or ways to help. But I think that this has really been a fabulous.
It's yeah, there are a couple more things. I don't know how much time there is because it is
Mhm.
3:59, but I would like to say a couple more things.
Sure, and Harold has a question too. So let's have Harold's question and have Naomi wrap up in maybe about 5 minutes, Naomi, and then we need to move on to a couple of other things that we have to present. Harold, can you pose your
Well,
question?
Mine is not necessarily a question. It's just to raise the issue that there are Afghan evacuees in the area. There are 20 of them. There are 20 of them at a hotel near LAX, 20 families. And they're going to run out of their hotel stay at the end of the month. The Unitarian Universalist Church in Long Beach has been working with the family that in Lomita, and there's needs there. There are other families, and there are 3 lawyers here in Long Beach who are needing some support and some assistance. So I don't want to take away from the prospect of welcome circles developing for people who will be coming. It's just that there are some pressing needs in the area today, right now. And if we can get some people involved in some of these things, it will help those families, and it may prompt people to do more in the future.
Are they affiliated with any?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that they're people, Julie Lee, who's very active in the community. And I'm not sure which organization she's working with now. She's been active with the homeless. She's working with food banks and with Days. And she's been organizing people to try to help them. And if people are interested in that, I can send you information from her. And I actually just happened to get an email from her, which now I can't see what she said, but she said right now the needs are employment referrals, housing, as Harold said, housing, help with English, and and she said immigration, which I think probably means legal help. And these families actually were brought and are in the hotel through a resettlement agency. But as Jackie emphasized, the resettlement agencies have been overwhelmed and they have not been able to provide sufficient case management support to these people. And the 90 days is running out. So that is a huge need right now. And one of the things Julie has been doing is just in the last week, setting up what they're calling the hotel has given them space to have a resource center. And people can come, for example, and help people apply for Medi-Cal or apply for food stamps or contact, set up a resume, do a resume. People can come and bring their laptops and help them with this. So if you're interested in that, I think, Harold, you have the information too, right?
Also,
Can't hear you.
in
So to contact us, and I'll send you Lee's information and the location.
Also, the resettlement agencies are referring to cases to Afghan refugee relief, which has been very active with the families who are staying in hotels in Los Angeles and Orange County. I'm just going to drop the link to their website.
Good, okay.
In the chat, and at the bottom of their homepage is a contact form where you can message them if you're interested in helping.
Yeah, and also, I also want to mention the resettlement agencies in LA County. They all need support also. They need financial support. I know International Rescue Committee has volunteers. I believe the others have volunteers, or as Jackie said, work through smaller groups and agencies.
Yeah, the reality is that the larger resettlement agencies, as we've both shared, have enough on their plates trying to manage their caseloads, that even though they've had a tremendous influx of volunteers wanting to help, they can't really manage those volunteers.
Well, I know IRC has a structure for volunteers. So anyway, I don't want to debate that, but they need, you know, the need is so great. You know, there's just help is needed from all different, in different ways, from different angles, and all of it's needed, and all of it's important. So, and my final editorial comment is that we're talking about the Afghan refugees, but our immigration system is really messed up and really does not work very well. This quote is from the highest legal training. It's flawed, it's backlogged, and unfair. And I would like to add, it's inconsistent, it's arbitrary, and it changes all the time. And there are huge discrepancies for people that go through the immigration system. They have to wait for years, depending what judge you get, depending whether you're in detention or not. And thankfully, at least these Afghan people are not having to go into the detention system. Depending on the location of the court, depending on your national origin, there are huge discrepancies in whether people get asylum or not. You know, some country, people from one area may get asylum 32% of the time, and from another area, 7% of the time. And we really need to address the problems in that system. And the other thing I'd like to say is that the spotlight in the news, in politics, in public awareness, you know, it goes from one group to another. We focus on the Central Americans, and we focus on the US-Mexico border, and then we focus on Haitians. And then there's a big crisis because there's an earthquake, and we're back to Nicaragua and Honduras, and then it's Haiti, and then it's Syria, and the Orange County Coalition for Jewish Coalition for Refugees had a wonderful presentation a few days ago by the director of an organization called
The
Multi-Faith Alliance for Syrian Refugees. And at the end, he said there are 29,000 displaced Syrians, and there are hundreds of thousands of displaced Syrians, probably millions. There are 29,000 that have been approved, that have been cleared, that have been vetted, that are waiting to come to the US as refugees, and they're sitting in camps. And this happens over, and now, you know, we're looking at Afghanistan, and now it's Ukraine. And we, you know, everybody, please, that's, you know, listening to this, please work whatever you can to advocate to clear up our immigration laws and system and the way it works, because it's really, really awful.
Naomi, it sounds as if it's the story about the beach that's filled with starfish. And
Yeah. Oh, yes.
you need a
Yes.
system to deal with the situation, but it's also important for each one of us to reach out and do whatever we can do individually, however we can join in and help our resources, our networks, our hearts, our hands, get involved, get engaged. And we've been provided with a wealth of information today. And while it may seem overwhelming, the journey starts with a single step.
Yeah.
So we all need to be challenged to reach out and get involved in the way that we can get involved.
No, I absolutely agree. And I'm a clinician, and I'm much more comfortable, working with a child, or working, with a group of people, that I am calling my congressperson and doing advocacy. I really, I'm on the advocacy committee of NCJW, but I don't enjoy doing advocacy. But I just want to say it's really needed, and it's really important.
Absolutely. It takes more than a village. It's going to take all of us to do all of these aspects of it. I think we have just come to the end of this part of the program. I do want to turn it over to Milia Islamajid. Milia, are you there? And would you like to give us a wrap up and bring us home on this?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marietta. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackie and Naomi, for the work that you do. Just listening to you guys for just an hour, a little over an hour, there's the sense of overwhelmness, but also a sense of that resolve, in the sense that there are ways that we can help. And that's something that's really empowering. And I hope that that's something that our listeners can take back with them. And as Marietta said, all of these resources that have been listed in the chat, we'll make sure to note that on when we upload this on YouTube as well. I'm so grateful that Harold is here, and I know he's not necessarily someone that enjoys the spotlight, but I do want to say that we're really honored to have him as our upcoming VP of Interfaith Relations for SCIC, specifically because of his expertise in with refugees, with immigration issues. This is something that it's increasingly happening, right? That's what America is. It's known to be a country that my parents were immigrants. They came here. We're a nation of other nations, and that's a gift. And so what we do with that is something that's an opportunity for all of us, people of all faith communities, to come together and be of service to these individuals who just face a surmounting amount of challenges as they integrate into this American system. And so that's something that the SCIC is definitely looking forward to working more in depth with the leadership of Harold. Again, my gratitude. Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you so much, Naomi, for this session. Marietta, I know, and I know we're a bit over, so I'll make this quick. We're hoping that the next Courageous Conversation will kind of be a continuation of this topic, insofar as actually perhaps, and again, this is something we have to still finalize, but working actively at it, actually having like an Afghan refugee family here as well. So we hear about all these challenges and what it is, but I think to put again a face, literal face, to these individuals and families that are facing this, I think that's something that's really profound, and we hope that we're able to do that. I want to just take 2 minutes, if I could, please share just some flyers for some upcoming events as well for the SCIC that we hope that you'll join us for. I'm not sure, whoever's doing the flyers, if they can make them appear, I will speak about it.
Just tell us which one you want first.
I think let's start with we have the annual assembly coming up. How about that? Let's start with that one. And the dates might be kind of, or Marietta, whichever one is convenient to put up, I'll speak about it.
Okay, let's do this one. This is the Interfaith Cafe, I believe.
Perfect. So every month we have an Interfaith Cafe, and we have one that's coming up on the 20th, and we hope that you please join us for this. It's a conversation very similar to this, that there's no certain agenda. It's really just coming together, people of different faiths, to talk about what it means to be a practitioner of that faith or not, and how that shapes you as a human being and your contributions to society. It's a great opportunity just to to make new friends and to learn about new faiths. It's on Zoom, March 20th, 3 to 4:30 p.m. Again, all this information will also be available on our website. And then we have the suspense. The suspense.
Not the tech person, but we're going to make it work. Okay, take a look at this one now.
Thank you. And then that's on the 20th of March. And this is on, yes, okay, great. On the 24th of March, every month, again, similar to the monthly Interfaith Cafes, we also have monthly Religion 101s. And this month, the Religion 101 is always on the fourth Thursday of every month in the evening at 7 p.m. And it has been on Zoom for the last 2 years, and we're continuing that for the most part this year as well. So our next speaker is on March 24th, who will be Devin, who will be speaking about the Baha'i faith. So we hope that, again, you join us for that as well. Information will be available on the website for that. And I do believe we have one more, which is our upcoming annual assembly. If we could have that flyer. The annual assembly is a yearly meeting, essentially. Of course, we used to have this in person, but now we'll have it on Zoom. But I know the writing is quite small there, but again, it's available on our website. But this year, it's the 69th annual assembly on March 27, 3 to 5 p.m. on Zoom. Our keynote speaker is a really amazing individual, a young man, John Wood Jr. He's a national leader of the Braver Angels, which is an organization that seeks to bring Americans together to bridge the partisan divide and strengthen the democratic and republican strengthen America as a whole, you know, to bring two groups of people together and see what we can do to better contribute to a positive change in America. Aside from that, he's also he's a musical artist as well as a noted writer and speaker. So he will be our keynote, which is exciting. And we also, and during this assembly, we honor kind of those unsung heroes, much like Jackie and Naomi and Harold and so many of you out there who are doing amazing things. So we have 5 such honorees: the faith leader, which is Imam Jihad Safir from Isla LA, the woman, Dawn Shelley from the Long Beach Baha'i community, Adrian Pai, who's an author called the book called The Minority Experience, the youth, Shahar Cohen Hodis, who's from the New Ground Muslim Jewish Partnership for Change, a profound, amazing young individual, and the sage, Don Garrick from the Orange County Interfaith Network. So we hope you'll join us for this. It's free, it's open to all. Again, it's on Zoom and the information is on our website as well. And I think the last thing, like any nonprofits, you know, we run predominantly on donations. So if you're able to, we would love for you to contribute in any way that you can. You can go on our website, or you could send us a check, or you could even text us, help SCIC to 44321. And all contributions, they allow us to continue programs like this. So that is my part. I thank you all for being here. I thank you for staying the extra, 15 or so minutes today for this very important discussion. I thank Marietta, who's done an amazing job since the onset of this pandemic and leading these courageous conversations. Kelly Kinsman, is she hiding? I don't know if her face is apparent, but she is our new office administrator, and I thank her. There she is. Hello, Kelly. Yes, I thank her for all the work that she does that allows us to do everything that we do. So thank you all. We really hope that you'll join us next time. We'll have more information about that. Marietta, I leave the last thoughts to you.
Well, these courageous conversations have been a challenge and a joy, and we started out with them once a week, and then moved to once a month. So if you do have ideas for these, please do go ahead and contact us and let us know. But we welcome the opportunity to present this information, and we're very grateful to all of you for being here today. See you next time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.